As of version 3.0.1 of Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, there are a total of 310 abilities. Now, if you know anything about Pokémon abilities, you'll know that not all abilities are created equally. Some abilities are good, some are very mediocre, and some are straight up bad. In this video, I want to focus on abilities that are just better versions of others. I will only be focusing on abilities that are strictly better than others. By strictly better, I mean that one ability literally does everything that another ability does, and does more. Think of this as one ability essentially being a proper subset of another if you're a math person like me. I will not be including abilities that are clearly meant to be bad to balance out otherwise broken Pokemon like these ones, because I don't feel like that would make for a very interesting video. I would also like to credit the users from this Reddit post, which is where I got the inspiration for this video. With all that being said, let's get right into the abilities. Toxic Boost is the signature ability of Zangoose. It grants a 50% increase to physical attacks when the user is poisoned. This is a really solid ability, since giving a 50% boost to physical attacks is pretty powerful, especially since you can poison yourself with a Toxic Orb. However, this ability is strictly a worse version of Guts, which does the exact same thing but works with any status condition, not just poison. So if you're poisoned, paralyzed, or burned, you will receive the same boost. Torrent is the ability of all water-type starters. It grants a 50% power increase to the user's water-type moves if its HP is at or below a third of its max HP. Water Veil is an ability that grants the user immunity to being burned. Both of these are strictly worse than Water Bubble, the signature ability of Dewpider and Araquanid. Water Bubble grants the user immunity from being burned, doubles the power of water-type moves at all times, and halves the damage from fire-type moves, which combines the previous two abilities and then some. Rock Head is an ability that protects the user from recoil damage. This is strictly worse than Magic Guard, an ability that protects the user from all types of damage that are not direct attacks targeted at the user, like status conditions, weather, entry hazards, and recoil damage. Immunity is an ability that prevents the user from being poisoned. Magma Armor is an ability that prevents the user from getting frozen. Limber is an ability that prevents the user from getting paralyzed. Water Veil is an ability I already mentioned in a previous entry that prevents the user from getting burned. And Vital Spirit and Insomnia are both abilities that prevent the user from being put to sleep. These are all strictly worse than Purifying Salt, the signature ability of the Gargantical evolutionary line, which protects the user from all previously mentioned status conditions and halves the damage from Ghost-type moves. Iron Fist is an ability that grants the user a 20% power increase to all punching moves. This is strictly a worse version of Tough Claws, an ability that grants a 30% power increase to all contact moves. All punching moves are also contact moves, and the power increase is lower, making Iron Fist worse than Tough Claws in two ways. Steelworker is the signature ability of Delmice. It grants the user a 50% boost to all Steel-type moves, essentially giving a Steel-type stab. This is strictly a worse version of Steely Spirit, the signature ability of Berserker, which grants the user and the user's allies a 50% boost to all Steel-type moves. On a similar note, Battery is the signature ability of Charjabug. It grants the user's allies a 30% boost to their special moves. This is strictly a worse version of Power Spot, the signature ability of Stonejourner, which grants the user's allies a 30% boost to all attacks, not just special. Hypercutter is an ability that prevents the user's attack from being lowered by an opponent. Big Pecs is an ability that prevents the user's defense from being lowered by an opponent. These are strictly worse than Clear Body and White Smoke, which prevents any of the user's stats from being lowered by an opponent. Going a step further, Full Metal Body is actually a strictly better version of both Clear Body and White Smoke, since it has the added bonus of being able to ignore other abilities like Mold Breaker. Grim Neigh is the signature ability of Spectrier. It increases the user's attack by one stage after the user knocks out an opposing Pokemon. This is strictly worse than Soul Heart, the signature ability of Magearna, which boosts the user's special attack by one stage after any Pokemon on the field faints for any reason, not just by the user knocking it out. Guerrilla Tactics is the signature ability of Galarian Darmanitan. It increases the user's attack by 50%, but forces the user to only be able to use the first move selected, functioning exactly like a Choice Band. Hustle is an ability that also increases the user's attack by 50%, but instead lowers the user's accuracy by a multiplicative factor of 0.8. These are both strictly worse than Huge Power and Pure Power, which both double the user's attack with no drawback. Steadfast is an ability that boosts the user's speed by one stage every time they flinch. This is strictly worse than Speed Boost, which boosts the user's speed by one stage at the end of every turn. Considering the fact that you can only flinch once per turn, and if you do get flinched, your speed for the rest of the turn doesn't matter. Speed boost increasing your speed by 1 stage at the end of the turn will always be better. Both Airlock and Cloud9 are abilities that nullify any effects of weather. For this entry, I will not say that these abilities are strictly worse, but do strictly less than the ability Teraform Zero, the signature ability of Terapagos in its terrestrial form, which does the same thing but also nullifies the effects of terrain. I say strictly less instead of worse because you might actually want to keep the effects of terrain to benefit yourself, but Cloud9 and Airlock are still both proper subsets of Teraform Zero, so I decided to keep them in this video. Drought is an ability that sets up harsh sunlight when the user enters battle. This is strictly worse than Orichalcum Pulse, the signature ability of Koraidon, which does the same thing but also increases the user's attack by 33%. You could maybe argue that this isn't strictly worse because you could be a special attacker and don't want to get hit with a higher damaging foul play or confusion damage, so in that case I will call Drought an ability that does strictly less. Electric Surge is an ability that sets up electric terrain when the user enters battle. This is strictly worse than Hadron Engine, the signature ability of Miraidon, which does the same thing but also increases the user's special attack by 33%. Illuminate and Kenai are both abilities that prevent the user's accuracy from being lowered and ignore evasion stat changes from the target. These are strictly worse than Mind's Eye, the signature ability of Blood Moon Ursaluna, which does the same thing but also allows for the user's normal and fighting type moves to hit ghost types for neutral damage. Poison Touch is an ability that grants the user a 30% chance to poison the target when hitting the target with contact moves. This is strictly worse than Toxic Chain, the signature ability of the lousy Loyal 3, which grants the user a 30% chance to badly poison the target when hitting the target with any move. And that's it for the abilities that are strictly better versions of others. Let me know in the comments if you feel I missed any, since there are hundreds of abilities. Thanks for watching,